suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. We are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is conducting this meeting April 10th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person, in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom or use *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and any relevant affiliations. You may state your address if you choose. Public comments will be limited to 15 minutes with no more than 2 minutes allocated to any one speaker. Answers to questions, unless very brief and fact-based, will be deferred to future meetings. The commission welcomes written comments at any time. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I, Andrea Solomon, hereby call this meeting to order. So since we're all here, we can just do voice votes when needed. So we will do a review and approval of minutes from both March 13th, 2024 and the minutes from April 10th, 2024. Did anyone have?
Can I make one statement?
Yes.
When you just called the meeting to order, you said April 10th, not May 8th.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if that makes a difference for the recording.
Sorry, it does. Yes, May 8th. I'm not sure. Maybe I was reading an old one. Thank you so much. Yes, it is May 8th today. So we have two sets of meeting minutes to approve. Does anyone have changes or edits that they
I had
want?
one tiny edit,
Okay,
just to prove that,
Reading these.
it's the one that I read it. It's on the, which one is it, the March 13th and April 10th? How do we differentiate?
so I guess by the day the meeting took place is probably the best one.
On March 13th, gosh, the third page, second paragraph. While discussing the bylaw, the commission continued to emphasize their interest, not emphasis.
Oh, okay.
It's a small
Okay.
D2, second paragraph. There's long.
Thank you.
For the. Okay, so for the meeting minutes from the April meeting. On D3, town meeting article review and presentation. The third paragraph down, there's a sentence in the middle that says, if this is accomplished, it would eliminate any need for an additional tower to be located on the Kaiser campus. So the Kaiser campus notwithstanding, like, just because there's a Verizon tower at the church doesn't mean there wouldn't be a need for any other towers in town. I don't know if that was stated as a fact or not, but that actually wouldn't be true.
So you want to strike that sentence?
Yeah, let's just strike it.
Mhm.
Then
Make a motion, just the changes discussed to approve the minutes.
Second set.
all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. So we'll move on to the review of the calendar.
All right, Andrea, we'll add just, we have one item that's come up that requires some attention of the Public Works Commission. Just got an invitation for June 6th, Sustainability Roundtable, which is going to be coordinated through the Sustainability Coordinator. We need I'll be in attendance, and they're looking for any, committee members who might be able to attend, just, maybe one volunteer. If it's a night meeting, 7 o'clock on the 6th. So just put that on.
How are they defining sustainability?
We have yet to get the agenda. They're just getting out to get the roundtable. So, Public Works has all sorts of interest with sustainability and involvement, including with facility management, as well as our, operations.
I would be interested in, just don't know if I could check my calendar to know what's going
And if someone wants to get back to me, we don't, just want to put that out there as far as something that's coming up quickly.
Others can volunteer, but I'm happy to volunteer.
Great.
So you got at least one.
Okay, I'll coordinate with you, and if there's any hiccups, we'll kind of reach out.
I'm happy to be your backup. If you can't do it, if you have a conflict, I'd be happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any more comments on the calendar?
Just on the timeline, given we will have to come up with a stormwater budget. That needs to fit into the budget cycle of the town. So we should review that. This when do we need to have a review and look at this?
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll propose something and we'll sort of put it in the next packet
Yeah.
for June.
Okay, so on to the rate hearing. I do have a motion to open the hearing, or I'll do it. I, Andrea Solomon, hereby move to open the public hearing for the fiscal year 2025 water sewer rates. A second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
I,
Give a presentation.
Yeah, well, let me get let me see if I can get the Zoom and share. How this goes. Okay, what I want to do, just very brief overview. We've had a lot of conversations on both water and sewer, but in the interest of the audience, and then just a refresher of the commission. Both the water and sewer budgets are enterprise. Basically, we look at our overall costs, including capital, including debt, including operations, and we come up with a 10-year plan. So we don't look year to year, but we look over 10 years. This rate hearing is focused on adjustments for FY 25. So in context, at the end of this, we're going to be looking for approval of things that we've been communicating to the general public through meetings we've had with the Public Works, developing a capital plan in the fall, work we've done with the FinCom, with presentations as part of the town finance. And basically, rather than create a new presentation, a reminder that we're in essence talking about with a water system, just to keep it kind of short. We have assets that value close to about $26 million. It's inclusive of water production and treatment facilities, of distribution mains, of water storage reservoirs, hydrants, and basically that is the infrastructure that we're charged to manage. Significant driver that we've sort of learned over time are the regulatory drivers and challenges. So, the obvious is we try to meet customer service interests, having reliable quality water, for our residents, businesses, community. Above and beyond that, we've had a lot of conversations about the drivers for the unusual are really to comply with regulations that we've talked a lot, primarily with water treatment. When you boil it down to what's the impact on our operating budget, you can see here that we're looking at proposed expenditures of close to $6 million. And it's broken up into our pump and treatment system and the orange general fund services. 14% of our budget goes to the support from other departments in town. And then you can see depreciation, we're at about 28% that we account for in our operating budget. In the capital plan, we have a breakdown, kind of an order of magnitude of what we anticipate now, again, FY 25. We're looking at significant investments, into the Nagog Pond improvements, water main replacement, and then we have miscellaneous other bundles of monies that we go, including meter replacement, station structures, hydrant replacement. You'll see 40,000. We've been talking about this, but basically, in order to realize both the expenses for operating, for the capital plan, we have put out there in the general public increase of somewhere in the order of 12.5%. And that is what the recommendation will be. We do have a number of customer classes, and I will kind of come down to this particular pie chart shows the distribution of our customers. 56% of our users are residential. You can see 24% is commercial, institutional, mixed use. You have the correction facilities, hospital up there at 13%. It's important as part of the budget discussion this year to make, highlight the fact that MCI, the closure is going to have a significant impact on demand. It's going to reduce demand, but it's also going to be more significant on the revenue that we collect from them. So we need to account for that. Then we deal with municipal buildings, public schools. And so that's sort of the, in essence of kind of what our customer class looks like. And when we put the package together, we provided you with an overview of what the cost will be in the memorandum. And attached, we actually have a water rate schedule. And the schedule of values is what defines the details of each class and how they can qualify and what that entails. So it's unusual for us to do any significant modifications into the rate schedule other than costs. So if there were, we would be highlighting any red line or significant change, in the actual schedule rate. So there's a lot of material here, but it's no significant change other than the year and the rates that have been captured, we've rolled up. So with that, want to sort of open it up to the commission for, sort of questions, comments, and we're talking specifically right now on the water fund, which serves about 95% of the community.
I had questions, but you answered them in your presentations.
So it was a quick presentation. We intended to give you time. You folks have
I'm trying to
helped.
encourage a quick presentation.
That's right. And you've helped us refine our messaging and bringing the capital plan and talking about the presentations to the commission has really helped, sort of make our case more clearly to the community as we go out and talk about it. So there's no surprises as far as the 12.5%. We've been sort of volunteering that for the residents. We are and haven't talked much about the commercial, institutional. They are going up the same percentage. We don't talk a lot about it because with the town meeting presentations, it's primarily to the residents, but we do account for the commercial increase as well.
So the decision you're asking for us to make, or the response you're looking for, is what?
So the Public Works Commission is the official rate setting authority, through the town bylaw. And so staff has been working on developing a budget, rates, revenues. We come here to formally have you folks do the final review and then approve any rate change. We'll also say rate changes, we're restricted through the bylaw to only do them once, no more than once per year. So this is our annual.
And the rate change you're proposing is 12.5%.
Correct.
For residential.
And pretty much across all the rate classes, we're increasing, and it's sort of called out into, sort of the memo.
And what assumptions are made about MCI and the impacts of MCI's closing on the revenues for next year?
It's significant.
Can't read that.
No, I'm gonna zoom in. And what's really important on this is that we've also explained that over the next 5 years, we're gonna be spending lots of money and borrowing lots of money. So this 12.5% is the beginning of a multi-year increase. And there's many ways of increasing rates. We could go with a 25% year one and drop it down, but we've basically put out there that you talked about MCI, they account for, you see in FY 25 is the top line, close to $700,000 a year of revenue. from MCI alone, and that's from the Correctional Institute. We also serve the farm up on the hill. They are gonna continue to be a customer and continue to operate, just to clarify. But that reduction in revenue is gonna have to be made up in the other, spread those rates out across all other customers. So that's the impact on an annual basis of what we have to make up with the loss of MCI. I will say over time, we have to be conservative. That site will be redeveloped. There's gonna be new customers coming on board, but just so you can see, that's the impact of MCI. I believe, and Bob Hill is sort of listening, over kind of remotely. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong. There's somewhere in the order of, was it 8% or so of our total demand that we're,
It's there, 9.1.
is it?
It's
Oh, it's-
one slide,
What do we have?
very top.
Oh, there you go. Okay, 9.1, the total water usage. And what's interesting is you see the revenue of 12.7. And the reason is we have our customer class, like the residential, has an increasing block rate structure. The more water you use, we try to incentivize conservation. When it comes to residents, it's primarily the seasonal high demands during the summer, which is when we target. For larger commercial, there's a certain allowance for the small businesses. We try to, that aren't water intensive, not to have, water or sewer really sort of, it's a significant line item in their operating costs. For the larger commercial operations, we try to incentivize them to look at their operations and reduce water, and wastewater wherever they can. So that just shows you the impact where, they only have a small block allowance for MCI on the base rate. And a lot of their, the revenue collected is from the higher block rate structure.
When do we expect that MCI is kind of shutting off the valves?
July 1st.
Okay. So
Now there'll be some use just to keep
yeah,
the facility
basic, yeah.
basic use, but they intend, we've been told, to relocate.
Hopefully the toilets are leaking, so you can charge more. So when we put the budget in, which was approved by town meeting, we didn't know about the MCI. Yeah. So our budget and our cost structure is kind of based on we would have the revenue. Now we know we're most likely losing $650,000, which is 12.7%. We're increasing by 12.5%, which seems to be kind of more or less offsetting that effect.
Mhm.
How confident are you that, hey, we are getting to kind of a zero sum at the end of the year? Is
Okay.
it really offsetting, or do we have other expenses in the year that suddenly go up and where the 12.5% are not enough?
Okay, so here's what's very important. As an enterprise fund, we do not have the same constraints or challenge of year to year like the general fund, where you have to know where you're, at the end of the year, you've spent the money or not. As part of the fund, as enterprise, we do have a reserve. And that reserve has always brought a lot of interest from the FinCom, finance director and community. Why is our reserve so great? We have somewhere in $13 million or so of reserve. Is to allow us to kind of offset the annual upsets. So Sven, the real issue is we're starting with a 12.5%. But as you saw, we were also anticipating a few years of that.
Yeah.
The question is, it's too far in the future for us to be definitive, but we just want to put order of magnitude of increase. Is it 12.5, 10? And what rate and, quickly do we spend money on the treatment facilities? Those are all the things that allows us to really manage the budget over a 10-year cycle is what we typically look at. And so this falls within that ability, the bandwidth to manage that.
Alan, would you indulge me for a second and let me chime in?
Yep.
Sven, fortunately, they announced this closure before the budget was fully cooked. So the pro forma reflects the loss in revenue.
Okay,
So I'm projecting in FY25, we were gonna be light $675,000. And when you look at the slide that Alan had up earlier showing the MCI impact, you'll notice that when you get into the out years, 28, 29, there are different rates based on whether we had MCI or we didn't have MCI. And the reason they don't kick in until the out years is that's when we see the full impact of the borrowing that was approved at town meeting, the $50 million borrowing and that sort of thing. So that I kind of tried to keep it conservative in the early years while we were looking at what is the true impact here, because we don't know, as you said, their pipes may leak like a sieve. We may be talking about, units that they think it's closed and it's not funded in this proposed state budget for next year, but there are minimum charges that we will still be collecting from the couple of meters they have and everything else. But I just wanted to reassure you, I mean, that was the only fortunate thing with this closing. Losing your largest customer is something to be concerned about, but because of the timing, we were able to pivot and reflect that in the pro forma and in the final rate structure we're proposing.
I have a question on that. So how many million or how many gallons or whatever units you're using here per month are we talking about for MCI?
Bob, do you have the units? Because we bill in hundreds of cubic feet, and that's what we call a unit. So Bob, do you have that number? Or you look at
Let
the-
me.
I just.
Yeah,
you can
well,
look that up.
I have it here in front of me. And this was based on the calendar year, because all my projections were, we heard they were closing in January. So I immediately looked at what was the prior calendar year, the prior 12 months worth of usage, that sort of stuff. We're talking just under 60 million. No, that's for all the prisons. We're talking about 46 million gallons of water. That's 126,000 gallons a day.
And what would be a residential unit equivalent? How many residential units would that equate to?
Alan, help me out here. What do we
I would
use
say,
for
I think we're talking about somewhere around 240 gallons, maybe, Oh, no, you know what it is? 65 times, I think it was 3. That would be the 65 gallons per capita is sort of where we're at as far as the typical.
Per day.
Per day,
Yeah.
yeah, so that would be 65 times, 3, it's about 200 gallons per day. And Bob, what did you say the total per day was there?
126,000.
126,000
We need,
divided by 200 is 630 new residents.
okay, I think it's good to know that also in communication to the town for the plan of MCI, to have equivalents that the town knows is what does it mean for residential units or say commercial.
Right.
That they have some numbers when they negotiate with.
That's right, and we know kind of it's easier on the residential side where it's difficult is on the
Yeah.
commercial institutional, because they're very specific to, those types of, we generally would use Title V spend.
Yeah.
On the wastewater side. Water use is usually half of what the design basis is for Title V wastewater, so, but in any event.
And then the last
Yeah.
comment, sorry,
Yeah.
I have, and you know that I know that data is now available for project potentially next year. We should look at how we can do potentially better in our curve for the power users versus the low.
That's right.
And I understand the data is now available so that you could look at that for next year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that allows us to kind of, speaking to the whole rate structure, and it's been many years since we've really reevaluated it. I can tell you that I think it's more than 2/3 of our residential customers do not go into the second or third step. But those who do can use a lot of water. And, you know, the question is 2 steps enough, or are we at the right price point? Is sort of what we need to do that analysis on. So my commitment is if we're fully staffed.
Oh, okay.
In the packet, you mentioned that, there's a lot of filtration improvements here, and a lot of those are based on regulations. And more stringent regulations in some areas, especially related to PFAS.
Mhm.
You mentioned that the town would look at grant funding if it's appropriate. Are there new grants coming out or funding coming out because PFAS is becoming such an issue?
The money that's available is being redistributed towards PFAS. We
Okay.
know that. And, you know, fortunately, our facilities are gonna be designed and constructed with PFAS treatment.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a little bit of shuffling of the funds. You'll hear, you know, $1 billion of federal funds that are, you know, sort of available for, you know, the water supply. It sounds like a lot. It's not, you know, but for Concord, we're really looking at ideally a low interest loan is probably the best we're gonna do.
Okay, thanks.
Any
So
other
we go-
comments? Well, can I take public comments if we're all done discussing? Any public comments about the rates? Rate hearing? Anyone in the, on Zoom?
You guys feel these conversations, we're always looking for green card, we're always looking for volunteers.
Don't see any hands raised in
All
the.
right, so we have to vote to close the hearing and
No, we
then.
gotta do sewer, right?
Then we're gonna
Oh,
do-
we sewer,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sewer.
yeah. So that's on the water fund. We'll now sort of bump to this, the sewer fund.
So we don't have to vote on the water and then.
We can, no, they're all kind of part
It's
of
all
the same,
one.
right? So basically, again, little less discussion on the wastewater side because we don't have as significant, you know, expenditures. But, you know, it is important in that, there, 1/3 of the town is on the municipal sewer. It's important to understand that it includes one advanced wastewater treatment plant off of, you know, Bedford that sort of discharges to, Great Meadows. There are 2 large, pumping facilities. One of them is just that brick building, you know, well, most of the flow from wastewater in town goes through that building before it goes to the wastewater treatment plant. And then there's one over in the Assabet on Main Street by the Assabet River. We have 34 miles of collection main. You can see manholes are the access that we have to the collection system. You see the value of that is close to about $20 million, you know, 18.8 million for those assets. To manage and maintain, we're looking at operating expense of $3.7 million. You will note a significant cost of our services. We actually have third-party contract management. That's Woodard and Curran actually operates the facilities, the wastewater treatment plant. You can see that there is also a significant amount of depreciation, 33% that goes into the development of the operating budget. And just like on as an enterprise, again, we feed into the town's support and other departments that are, you know, general fund and, you know, provide services to the operations of our, this utility. The roll-up as far as our plans for capital, you know, this year, is certainly more modest than water, but still significant. I think, you know, the most notable expenditure I'm gonna say is that, the $300,000 for the wastewater capacity optimization. We've talked about capacity being a constraint for economic growth development. Ironically, MCI is a high water user, but they're not a sewer customer. So it's kind of interesting. We could have used that as a relief valve. However, they have in the governor's budget, they've identified the fact that the closure of MCI may be an opportunity for the town of Concord to take that treatment facility over. It's very complicated. It's got a capacity of about 300,000 gallons a day, which is not insignificant. But if we are creative and we can sort of look at the town's needs, including the 40Bs, including the MBTA zoning, there may be an opportunity there. And so we will be working with consultants to kind of explore where we are and where we may, be able to go with, a partnership with MCI.
Would that potentially then expand the town's capacity?
We'd be looking at it to expand the town's capacity. With the same word of caution, there's so much interest in that particular economic development of that parcel. What we want to do is, will there be, capacity outside of that, for other town interests? But we got some ideas, but, I think a lot of effort over the next year is going to be sort of a needs assessment and discussions as far as there'll be a lot of discussion about planning on the wastewater with the goal that maybe we can do something on the capacity constraint we've realized. Right now, we are over our permitted capacity for wastewater. We are not alone. There's a lot of communities just because of the very high groundwater everywhere, inflow, infiltration, that's just sort of surcharging a lot of these communities. So, well, it's a regulatory threshold. We're hoping there may be allowance and some understanding that it's not just a Concord problem or mismanagement in Concord. So that's our expectation. When we get down to the proposed rate adjustment, you can see it's far more modest. It's in line with our, traditionally, we went somewhere between 3% and 5% was what we would generally go up year to year. And you can see here, we're recommending a 5% increase. We have not changed the sewer improvement fee. You hear a lot about that, and the community hears a lot about the concerns of how much money is for new development or a change of use. And what developers, residents are learning is wastewater management is expensive, whether it's on your private property, just to install a new, a leaching field or septic system. In Concord, it can be $20,000 to $40,000 easily. For businesses, their alternative is packaged treatment facilities, which are millions of dollars, to design and construct. So the $40 per gallon is something which we think is the right number. We have a feeling that once we get a better sense of what's going to happen with MCI, the funds we collect allow us to do these studies and potential modest expansion. That's why we collect the money. So all this change is not the burden of the 1/3 of the town that's on sewer. If there's community benefits, that fund is drawn to allow us to do the studies and capacity work. So in any event, you can see the impact on, so a typical, resident is going to be close to about $40 per year increase, cost. That's the high level wastewater.
Questions?
Not a lot of discussion, conversation through the FinCom, hasn't drawn a lot of attention other than capacity, MCI, and the challenges of development, because we're kind of there.
Just again on MCI.
Yeah.
So assuming we would have the opportunity to take over that facility, would then suddenly the other person be a client of ours? And
Yes, just like
Generator.
MCI was a water customer.
Yeah.
That's right.
so
They'd be built into whatever model that is.
I think you cannot estimate right now what the cost of all of that is.
That's
because
right.
We don't have details. Yeah.
That's right.
Any public comments about sewer rates? Anybody online?
I have on that. Is the MCI prison,
Name
Jim Whalen, 65 Dover Street, Concord, Mass. Is the prison site just the prison site, or is it also going to be the fields that are like on the, I believe, the western side?
It's
Is that
just-
all going to be developed?
it's only sort of the area by the wall. That's where that's the incarcerated area, and then just adjacent to it, there's a little road that goes in outside the wall. That's where the wastewater treatment plant is,
Yeah.
but it's that parcel. The rest of the land, MCI, the farm is still gonna function and,
Gonna stay
yeah,
the
that's
farm.
right, stays
So
the farm,
like expansion on what's
Correct.
there.
correct.
Anybody else?
We have a motion or something?
We have to close the hearing first.
Oh,
Are we ready to close the hearing?
Yep.
All right,
Make a motion, we close the hearing for water and sewer rates.
a second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, now we need a motion to approve the water and rate, the water schedule and sewer schedule rates.
You have one or-
Oh, I'll
I
just read
can,
it.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I, Sven Weaver, hereby move to close Hammer. We had that already. I, Sven Weaver, hereby make a motion to approve water rate schedules and sewer rate schedules as presented and described in the fiscal year 2025 water and sewer rate schedules memo dated May 2nd, 2024, as submitted by the Public Works Director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously adopted those. Okay, so we'll move on to D2. Are there any public comments that are not about anything on our agenda? Anybody online or in the room? No, you see anybody online? I can't see.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay,
No.
right. Okay. Okay, so we'll go on to commissioners' comments. So I get to, this is my time to thank you all for your patience during my last year as being chair. Done with that. And I want to welcome Gretchen Rohrbach as our newest member of the Public Works Commission. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
And you come with a background in science, engineering, like all kinds of.
And water
important stuff.
resources engineering.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
So you know stuff.
Yeah, I was at the MWRA for a long time, first in combined sewer overflows and then, water.
Oh,
So
great.
both
And a
ends of the
teacher.
pipe. And I teach, yes, I've been teaching about water for
Wow,
the last 20, for a while.
fabulous.
It was awesome. So thank you and welcome aboard.
Well, thank you for running into me in the park. What did you say? What? I need you.
This is how it happens.
This is how it happens. Walking dogs at Emerson, you never know.
Yes, which is part of the reason actually I wanted to, during my last couple months of being chair, put public and commissioner comments first, because I think sometimes we do learn a lot. We can learn a lot from the public. We can meet interesting public people who want to be part of this commission. And I learn a lot from, I've had the opportunity to go to the chairs breakfast the past year and learn a lot from other chairs, and we get a little more clued into other committees. And I just see a real, perhaps coming out of COVID, people really wanting to work together in town to get things to happen. And I think we saw an excellent example of that with like the planning board and all the work they did with the MBTA Communities Act. Like that was a huge amount of public outreach and it really paid off. And so I see us doing that with stormwater and getting people more engaged in what Public Works does and needs to do, and we need their support to do. So anyway, I thought that was one good reason to move it to the front. I realized at the end, there were often things I wanted to say or things I learned from the chair's breakfast that I didn't get a chance to say because it was like 6 o'clock and we were running out. So anyway, so having said that, let's move on to the election of our new officers.
Before we do that. That's a little thank you.
Oh my God,
For
it's really nice.
a tough year with a lot of
Was
that
that all
happening.
one?
If you don't like it, I take it.
Excellent.
Yeah, so you're not getting this,
Like
you're not
fucking
getting this in the US.
Oh.
It's ready to drink.
It's ready to-
So tonight, you know what you do.
Celebrate.
Very nice.
Okay, very
Thank you.
nice, very, very, very. Okay, so without further ado, and I don't think we need much discussion on this, we can certainly open that up if we need to, but I, Andrea Solomon, would like to make a motion to elect Sven Bieber and Jeff Lasser, Sven as chair and Jeff as vice chair of the Public Works Commission, effective immediately following this vote. Do I have a second?
A second.
Did you want to discuss?
Oh, yeah, I think we should form a task force.
I want to clarify that this was not a bribe, yeah?
We're gonna have a long discussion, but that's when it's interesting. All right, so all in favor of this election?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that was unanimous, and now I get to hand it over to Sven.
Okay, thank you. Now I have to get into that spiel here.
Why is this woman smiling?
Well, you know, you can always come back to you.
She did a great job.
Yeah,
That's
you did a
right.
great job.
You do rotate, and that's part of the whole sort of, you know,
Good.
to we're hoping Andrea will return, but the good news is she's not going anywhere. It's just a different responsibility for the next year.
So with that, I would like to move to agenda item D5, petition for temporary repairs of a private way. Do we have the petition in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to give you the opportunity to present and to inform the commission. It is not a public hearing as defined in the respective bylaw. This is to hear your case, to understand, and for us to ask questions. Yeah, and potentially for the public, the general public to chime in. And then we will take that and see like what the conclusions might be, but we might not make a decision today.
Sure.
Yeah. So with that,
Thank you.
You want to come on up, Mr. Williams?
I wish I-
Or you, whatever works for you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there's two chairs right
Oh,
there.
sure,
Just,
yeah.
Make yourself comfortable.
I've got some visuals here. I think it'll be a little easier to kind of show you. Instead of trying to describe everything that would be on the petition. Again, my name is James Whalen. I'm at 65 Dover Street in Concord. The property is right about here. I did bring, for those of you that probably didn't have, I know
We
Alan, you
passed the
probably.
packet out for
You
the.
did pass the packet. I'll just send those out anyways, and there's
Mhm.
some extra information in there. So again,
Thank you.
so I'm actually with the Board of Health in Concord, but I'm representing myself and our neighborhood this evening, and it's not pertaining at all to the Board of Health. Here you go, guys. Well, there you go.
We got.
So again, this is my wife, Courtney. She's also at 65 Dover Street. I also want to direct some your attention to Michael Rossi. He's with Con Cavanaugh. He's been also working with us on this project. And he's our legal counsel. So I'm just gonna bring this in.
And I might be able to get something close to that up on the screen.
good,
So
okay.
people can see it if they're remote.
Sure.
So let me see what I can do on that, but please go ahead.
Oh, okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So again, I'm at 65 Dover Street. Dover Street is basically the center of the White Pond watershed. In the north here, you might see it a little bit, is White Pond. In the south is actually the water pump for the White Pond water supply. There's a water supply that comes up, a pipe that comes up Hemlock Street, Varick Street, and then down Dover Street. Everybody in this area has to access Dover Street in order to access their properties, including the town to access the water well and hiking trails and whatnot at the far end of Dover Street. So I come here today because we have a pretty big issue. Dover Street in moderate to heavy rains floods pretty significantly. It's a big issue, not only for us, we have two small children, but basically everybody in the neighborhood has to walk through some pretty significant water. It can be 2 feet, upwards of 2 feet in this area. There's a couple of properties on the north side that actually have septic on their front lawns instead of the back lawns. So when the water floods, it kind of floods those lawns out, and septic effluent actually goes onto the street and into the water area. This is, again, a big problem because the town has just, spent a lot of money on basically infrastructure for the pond, making it accessible, swimming. I think they just took over the beach. So we're concerned about that and at large, when you have significant flooding that really doesn't go anywhere. So if you look, and it's not a topographical, it does show the locations of the wetlands. The yellow, I think, is 100 feet off, 50 and 25. But here, everything kind of funnels down. So Bolton Street, Darton Street on both sides, Dover Street on both sides, and collects in this area. And what happens is, like I mentioned earlier, it gets larger and larger and floods out the entire center. So one of the reasons we are here tonight is to ask the town to kind of take the lead on helping us address this kind of disgusting, dangerous and unsightly issue. And then help us to assess betterments to everybody that utilizes Dover Street to access their property, including the town, with the water well and White Pond to the north. Just to kind of give you guys some idea. So this is looking on Darton Street South. This is Dover Street. And again, it doesn't, this picture in general doesn't do it a lot of justice because the water, if you were to see, would continue way up the street and way up the street on Dover. Unfortunately, this is also what it looks like. If you see, this is again Dover Street, and this is looking north. You can see this property here. I don't know if you can see really well, but you can see the water all the way into the backyard. So not only is there septic, but you know, who knows what chemicals are going into that, you know, home debris, dog waste, everything. It's really kind of a, you know, for a town like Concord, it's really unfortunate to have this in existence, you know. You would think that, you know, that the town would be of great assistance with this. So that is why we have the petition and why we'd like to kind of move forward. And having not only a fix, there's a couple of ideas in the packet itself. One of them, we had an engineer when Courtney and I first moved to the neighborhood. I don't know if you guys know John Scheib. He came and assessed the area. And basically there's catch basins that are just storm basins that they don't go anywhere. So it's like basically a big bathtub. The water comes down almost from every street and every angle and then fills up. Scheib's design, he designed these underground catch basins basically that would expand the capacity to hopefully bring some of this surface water underground where it's captured and dispersed rather than just going into, you know, basements and you know, and basically destroying people's property, but also bringing things that people can basically track down Dover Street into the water area or up to the beach. A lot, I don't know if the board knows, but Varick Street has parking that from people from out of town utilize. There's like, what, 5, 6
I think
parking
there's
spots?
3 parking spots that people can utilize, you know, the anglers are coming to fish, the hikers are coming to access all the trails in through there. So, you know, it is a public access point.
And people
for
do
people to-
illegally swim. So people are constantly in the summer coming down, wading through this, putting God knows what's on their feet. And then coming up and swimming in the water. And I don't know if you know about the blue-green algae issue that White Pond, a lot of ponds have. But we've had an exceptional bad few years with the blue-green algae. And in fact, the town has done a fantastic job in mitigating it. And I would hate to see this, you know, be kind of a feeding source for that blue-green algae. You know, global warming is here. It's one of those things where when we moved in 11 years ago, it happened frequently. Probably we had this flooding issue that really covered almost this entire area. Maybe what, 5, 6 times a season. And now we're seeing it, you know, last summer, it happened almost every other day.
Wow.
It was constantly happening. And, you know, again, the John Scheib design will help bring, first of all, so that we don't have the surface water, we don't have these properties being flooded, which would help mitigate any septic effluent, dog feces, or any, as you see with this picture, you know, chemicals from basements or siding or whatever's in that home. It'll keep the water away from those properties.
Let me ask a question.
Oh, sure.
Is it, maybe this is getting ahead, or maybe, I don't know if it's relevant. Are these town roads?
Okay.
So it's a private way,
What
which
is
is
that?
why we're utilizing the bylaw, which is what the petition is. There's a 1996 bylaw that was recommended that we access to petition the town for specific, there's like 10 private ways in town that we fall under, which is why we've, got the abutters of Darton Street, because Darton is in need of other paving repairs. But the problem with paving without addressing any drainage or infrastructure is that it makes the problem worse. So the road really cannot be paved without addressing drainage issues. So the bylaw, we fall under the bylaw, the 1996 bylaw for requesting for repairs, and that the town would help come up with a plan and assess a betterment to all of those. And we really feel like there's a significant portion of the neighborhood that will be benefiting from a fix to that section of the road, because all of the water from Bolton Street is coming down, from Dover Street, from Darton Street, all into one area that is not providing sufficient drainage for
There's no
taking
drainage, there's no
on that
infrastructure
much
at all.
water from all these other directions. Because there's just not enough, there's just not enough drain
Yeah.
systems in place to
So
hold that.
just for the benefit of the commissioners and the public in the room, so there is a bylaw, with the last 2 pages of the package. Private ways in White Pond watershed temporary repairs bylaw. That was from 1996. Which the petitioner based their petition on, which in the end enables or gives the Department of Public Works authorization to do repair, and talks about how you petition and how the costs are split. And I will have a few questions on that. So is this presentation?
Sure, there's just one last thing, so, ideally, what we would like to do, and speaking with a couple of, what we have presented in our petition as far as a fix is concerned is the minimum that would handle the water. The Shipe design would be minimal. Ideally, we would take this water, connect up the sewers, and drain it down Bolton Street. This is a town property. This is just another potential fix where other properties would connect and drain also, and this is enough off the wetlands. It's also a nice grade away from people's property, and you wouldn't have to impede or impact anybody's existing properties. So I've highlighted this, just an aside, but again, our hydraulic engineer, you probably have great input on that. The whole study was there, and that's our minimal fix for basically fixing what is a big bathtub.
So you use the bylaw, and I would say it's not perfectly worded, but in hindsight, it's easier to judge. But I have a few more kind of questions about using the bylaw, would then open it to questions. And then if you haven't covered, I have a few more, but I just want to focus in the beginning on some procedure. So you have a certain number of signatures.
Correct.
By selecting the properties along
Well, the pictures represent Darton Street,
Darton Street and so on.
but it impacts
so
Dover
you're-
and Darton.
In between the time you put the petition in and now, my understanding is that one lot was sold.
No, it's on the market.
It's on the market.
It's on the market, so it's still the same number of signatures.
Still the same, currently still the same number.
Okay, all right. Then, the bylaw talks about temporary repairs. Looking at this, and I had a chance to do a little field trip with Director Cathcart to see the things, this looks more than temporary. So
I'm gonna
how do you
direct-
look at that?
If you don't mind, I'm gonna direct over to my counsel, Mike Rossi, again with Con Cavanaugh, who might be able to kind of speak more
Yeah.
intelligently on
And
more
it's-
than I
that's
would
the
be able
question
to
of
from a
scope.
legal standpoint.
It's more a question of scope, yeah, so.
With the chair's permission, can I address
Yeah,
that?
please.
So, thank you, first of all, for your consideration here. I think the first thing I would say is the bylaw does specify a couple of types of repairs that are contemplated, and I'm referring at the bottom to the sections that are Roman numeral. So the necessity of providing adequately drained ways, that's exactly what we're looking to do here. We're looking to install a drainage system. Number two, the necessity of providing adequate passable ways from public ways to residences. That is again, what we're looking to do here, pretty much to a T by repaving the road. I would suggest that a temporary repair versus a permanent repair would mean, repaving a street is temporary. Putting in even drainage could be temporary. Putting in a new road, for example, that would be something that would be considered a permanent repair, that would change the topography of the neighborhood. But repaving the road would, in our view, be something that is clearly considered in this bylaw and would be of the nature of a temporary repair.
But you're proposing to implement a complete new stormwater system, so that's not a repair, that's installing a new system.
Right, and that's, I would suggest clearly contemplated in the bylaw by saying the repairs are required by public necessity, including but not limited to the necessity of providing adequately drained ways so as to reduce ecologically harmful runoff into wet pond.
Okay,
I don't think there's a way to do that without installing a drainage
yeah,
system.
again, it comes, probably falls under the drafting and the intentions of this file. And the last question I have, which is again only on the form, is, you have, 7 signatures. So you have 7 people signing up for this, but you're asking and proposing to do a betterment to 61 parties.
Correct, and that is the individuals that benefit from a passable Dover Street. In the winter, the road ices over and basically any car on Dover Street acts like a Zamboni. It's really it's really dangerous.
So why wouldn't you ask all that are affected, you're saying they're affected by this, to sign and to get some kind of a number where it feels now that 7 parties make a decision about the cost of 61.
I'm gonna refer that over to Mr. Rossi.
If I could just, I agree that the bylaw as worded may leave a little bit to be desired. It's not a model of clarity, but the way the bylaw reads is that the petition needs to be signed by 60% of the lots which abut such ways. So what we were trying to do here is really focus on the immediate area and satisfy the language of the petition by submitting one that's signed by 60% of the lots which abut the ways. The betterment question is broader, and so we think that the betterment does not necessarily correlate, at least in terms of the language of the bylaw, with the people that are required to sign the petition.
Follow up on that,
Yeah, so that'd be my question, so I would open
were
it to.
additional people asked?
Oh, so originally the issue, so along here, so Darton Street needs to be paved. There's potholes all over it. It's an issue. So when we were talking about let's pave it, the drainage systems kind of sit right here at the corner.
Actually, just so you can
Oh,
put them
okay,
up there.
perfect.
So-
Right, so they're kind of at the corner
So the orange
The
represents the
orange,
drainage.
exactly, those
basin.
are existing.
There's 4 or 5 in that location.
So what happens is that, yes, we want to pave our street and we have to come together as neighbors to pave the road and fix it. The problem that arose is that in paving the street, you will make this problem worse. So we
Significantly.
have to address the drainage. So, yeah, if there's gonna be significant drainage implemented, then yes, this will be a betterment for the entire, now. The part where we need to pave Darton Street down here or pave Darton Street up there, is that paving part of the betterment gonna be assessed to everybody? No, the paving is, should be assessed to here or should be assessed to these lots, but the actual infrastructure that would need for the drains, that is going to be a betterment for the entire neighborhood. For public health, for safety with these, septic systems on this front yard being implemented in these, recurring flooding that we seem to be having with the worsened rain. This sensitive area over here with the White Pond, we have a public water pump here that the town owns and
QA
maintains.
is the town lot tip. On
And-
Darton, you're a butters to the,
And the town is a butter,
and the
so
butter to Darton Street.
that's kind of where it starts. So yes, we need this, but now the infrastructure needs to be addressed, which is a broader
Yeah.
neighborhood
I
problem.
understand that,
Yeah.
but,
I guess the reason I asked the question, if others were asked, is we're being asked if Public Works should then get involved with this to move this forward. And don't interpret this as I'm opposed to the project. I'm just thinking more of the process. So if we're dedicating resources to work with you to move this forward, but of the 60 people, 40 may have been approached and opposed to it, are we putting effort to something that may not be approved in the end because so many of the abutters don't want to support this?
The question is, how do you, with public health and how do you
That's not my
oppose?
question.
Well, it is
Have others
in a
been
way.
asked?
I guess the question is that we feel like we've complied with the town's bylaw and laws that they've set forth
Yep.
for us to work with,
Yeah.
so.
I just want to know if there's been other feelers out there and what type.
I
of-
think a lot of people want it to be
Okay.
fixed and know it needs to be fixed. Now, do I think other people want to open their wallets and
No,
say
that's-
that they're going to benefit from it? This is why we're
No one's
requesting
opening
the
their
town,
pockets.
this is why
We're
we
not
need the
fighting.
town to kind of,
They are on private.
Be a
roads,
bigger-
and that's part of being
right,
on a private road.
right.
You have
If you
to
can
open
access
your
it.
pockets.
no,
Your property, you
I-
have to be able to access
I-
safely and
Yeah.
cleanly.
it is a sticky situation.
other question.
So it looks like reading through the oddly worded bylaw, the petition should come to the department. So this petition was delivered to the department, not to the committee.
Mhm.
Okay, because the memo says differently. So it comes to you guys, so the department then decides to work with you, come up with a plan, you bring that plan to us. Let's say we approve it, then, it goes out for a public hearing, and that's when you would get the neighborhood more involved, and we would know their response to the betterment.
There's just one other thing too, just a little bit of history. Shore Drive was impassable at one point in time. As part of that project, it was repaved, and I believe a betterment at that point was assessed. Just because the mail service could no longer utilize, it was so unsafe. So safety is one of the reasons why we would come here for this.
Mhm.
Also, at that point in time, Dover Street was paved. A second time, the street was dug up to put in a new water piping system for the entire town, for the betterment of the entire town. So all of Dover Street was dug up for a second time and repaved without a betterment. But again, at that point in time, it was just surface and it was, the infrastructure was never addressed. In fact, the road was pitched in such a way that it made this area significantly worse. According to old time people that have been here for 40 years and plus, not us.
Yeah, we've been here 12 and a half. so.
Well,
You all done, or? One thing I would ask if we move forward with this is, as you said, it's gotten worse over the last number of years. And being someone in the business, we look out to 2050 and beyond. So I think if we're looking at improvements, we need to not look at what's happening now, but look at what's happening down the road, whatever. I don't know if we do that already as a practice for other stormwater improvements in town, but we need to be looking at what the precipitation may be 20, 50 years from now.
it is in the study that John Scheib,
Okay.
he did mention. I can get you the full study if you like. If any of you would like to see the digital copy of the full
Does he
study.
have a year he's designing for?
Yeah, we did that about 11 years ago. He did the study. I'm sorry, what was
No,
the
no.
question?
Was he calculating stormwater improvement, that projecting of what the rainfall would be at? a
50
future-
years, I
50
think. I
years
think it
out.
was
Okay,
50
good.
and then 100, I want to say 50 or
Okay,
100.
good. Okay.
Yeah, he forecast,
Yeah.
I think John had worked, he said at the time, he had worked with the town on several occasions. He's since kind of stepped away from working with towns, and we have another engineer that also approved what John had done, and we did that this year.
Okay,
we have a
Last year.
We have a second engineer that came, a hydraulic engineer that studied the original study from 11 years ago
mhm,
and signed off on it before we did the petition, just to double check our work.
okay.
Because we realized it was 10, the
That had been
the
11 years.
plan had been 10, over 10 years old, so.
Other question from the commissioners?
No, I think I'd like to see that study. I am concerned that if we are gonna spend that money, that it's not gonna be enough. I mean, and I was also concerned with your comment about picking up the sewer as well as the stormwater into a treatment plant. That's a whole nother,
To a treatment plant.
well, you were saying to bring it down. for
No, I
treatment.
think it's just to drain it off
He
the
said
surface.
he said sewer, what
Yeah,
he's
there's no
saying is,
sewer,
he's
right?
Well,
saying
you're
a
talking
drain, he said
because
a
of
drain, he means we don't have any sewer in our
Out
neighborhood,
sewer.
I know what you're talking about, he said sewer, but he said sewer drain, but what he meant is like a water drain to connect a stormwater drain to connect it,
Okay.
so it was not
I was
it was
thinking
not a
it-
sewer, we do
Right.
not have sewer in our town.
Well,
So
I knew that
I
the-
heard that comment and I was like, I don't know. we
Well, I
need to
was
be kinda
thinking about that
clear.
you have some systems in the front
nothing.
yards and you were just gonna
No,
pick them all up.
they're-
Just septic.
Okay,
They're
well,
septic, they're a
Right.
septic, but everybody in the neighborhood is on
Thank you,
septic.
that's sent a
This
lot
whole
of.
side of
thought.
Concord has no, we don't have any hookups to sewer at all.
And just be careful using that word.
Yeah, yes.
Duly noted.
The
Drain.
storm drain
Storm
water.
drain, yeah, not sewer, yeah.
Any other questions? I have one with respect to regular cleaning. So when was the last time the current system was cleaned?
So the current system, we clean every 2 years. It originally started with us. We were the first ones to do it in many years. Then we used Big John Sewer and Drain. They gave us a deal, so we actually cleaned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drains at that point in time. Again, we did it every 2 years, and then there was a committee in our neighborhood that actually one of the people in our neighborhood kind of got the kids involved as kind of like a project. And at that point, they also joined in the effort to keep the storm drains clean and clear over the last 2 or 3 years. And I believe that we also used Big John at that point, Jane.
Can I speak?
Let's come back to that.
Okay, so we're doing it every 2 years religiously, cleaning all the drains.
And
at
it
this
is
point.
it's not sufficient to just cleaning them out.
Yeah,
We're
Cleaning
still-
them out is still,
It was just-
this was after. This happened after, this was this past year. We've been cleaning them for 11 years and we're still having these water issues.
Did the neighborhood ever consider to form a homeowner association?
As far as a homeowners association, I feel like the horse has left the barn on that,
Okay,
just because of the volume of people. And again, we have people that are so far that everybody accesses through Dover Street. But these people might as well be in another town, like, as far as knowing,
We do have a-
accessing and whatnot.
We do have something, I mean, you guys may have heard of, it, is the Dover Street Property Owners Association, but it is not a homeowners association. It is an association that takes a small amount of dues, but we collectively own a little piece of property that goes down to the pond and has stair access. So as a community, we're able to access that, and the fees are for maintaining the raft and paying the taxes is my understanding. So it really is about kind of this preservation of this collective town beach access.
They
or not
recently
town
collected
beach
money
access,
to
but-
kind of stay in compliance with the stair with railings and
Okay.
whatnot.
But
it's-
as far as
They
road
told us
maintenance,
it does not include road maintenance, it's individual collection and donation. And it's very few people in the overall neighborhood.
okay. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Can I ask Alan a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And maybe you can answer this.
Yeah,
How many
please.
other private roads are there in the town? And I'm thinking of the issue of, and maybe it's irrelevant because of the bylaw. It speaks specifically to your neighborhood. By the way, I used to take my daughter to daycare over there, so I know the road well. Is there any issue with setting a precedent in terms of this activity?
Sure.
I don't know, maybe totally irrelevant.
Just to be helpful, so this doesn't happen often, first of all. So as far as our experience when the Whalens introduced this, okay, regrettably, no staff member has been involved in Public Works to see this through. But we started looking into precedent and, what this is all about. we did learn, and it's clear, 1996 is when the bylaw was adopted, primarily because of concerns like this, primarily focused on the road conditions. And I know there's some people in the audience from the neighborhood who might be able to help us with this, but the record we could find, and regrettably, is the most current effort was 2003. And that was for using this mechanism, and it's a set up to allow for, private property owners to try and figure out a way to do something above and beyond their own capability. It does require some oversight if they want it done to, in accordance with town kind of standards. The 2003 was for Shore Drive and Eaton. And basically that was, Shore Drive is right along the edge of the road, and then Eaton Street is right here. And believe it or not, I saw some pictures. They look very similar to what Darton looks like. And it was pitted, potted. It was really in need of repair. And what was driving a lot of this was, we also have a bylaw that allows us to plow these streets. It's unusual, so it's controlled. The question, how many other private ways in town? It's a good question. There probably needs, but the bottom line is the bylaw at least allows us to treat this particular neighborhood a little bit differently, including across the pond. Mitchell, White Ave, they're also in this umbrella. 2003, we don't have great records, but there was basically information that talked about the kind of treatment, and what I could glean was, and again, I don't even know if we have as-built, so kind of working with engineering, was that it was for, basically temporary repairs were include, the road was reclaimed, compacted and graded, and it received an overlay. Interesting. No drainage structures were included in the plan. And, I think what's important is the bylaw was set up because there were problems like this that were just untenable. They looked at a tool, it's not perfectly, the language is open to some interpretation, but the intent, and that's where I think the commission and staff have to understand, was it's private ways. They were established before zoning. So predated zoning. Now, when a private development occurs or PRD, they'd have an HOA established for this very reason, to prevent, avoid these sorts of problems that you can anticipate. But the challenge becomes when you take the public money and invest it into the private interest. It's very clear that, and I'll tell you, communities across the Commonwealth struggle with this. Everybody has a different shade of gray of how they do it, with a complete hands-off to tools like this that might be helpful. But in this particular case, what presents it to us is a legitimate problem. There's no question, it's captured, it's real. The question is the solution. And what's interesting is it affects direct abutters, and the intent, I think, when you look at 60%, was trying to make sure the commission wasn't put in a position of having a judge and jury, it had to have a majority of interest. What's different about this is back then, there was no drainage improvements, and the costs were very clear to the direct abutters, which see the direct improvement. It even identified town property, like you mentioned, was an abutter. They were assessed, but didn't pay. So they kept the cost down, but there was no fee that the town paid itself, right? But that was how that was calculated. So they were part of the equation. In this case, what's interesting, as Sven mentioned, the method, and by the way, the bylaw turned into a format that the Public Works Commission sort of reviewed and vetted to say, here's how you make an application, make some sense of the bylaw. And so the Whalens did follow the prescribed, this is what's asked. So when there's a request on a method of, you can recommend a method just to do a little bit, it's not unreasonable to say, well, the stormwater system affects more. But what's interesting is the petition is signed by 60% of direct abutters. The assessment is for a larger area, and there might be, there's a disconnect there. And what the the town needs to do is have a process and a project that works. I don't know what works means yet. We know there's a problem. The works is really in the details as far as, well, what are we going to achieve when we're done? And the whole idea of temporary wasn't by accident. They included in the bylaws, temporary. When you get into improvements, you also get into a new arena of planning board potential review, or lots created now because of an improvement that now can be developed that need to be understood. With the stormwater, it's a different beast altogether. And I think when you look at the proposed cost, and it's interesting, I think, most of the cost of this project was the stormwater system. And so that's different than any precedent. So the only precedent was Shore and Eaton was done using this as a vehicle, and I must have been done successfully. If you drive down there, they look like they're in pretty good shape still, and that was, here's as good as 20 years ago. So the roads are still in good shape from that work. There was, I believe, as Mr. Whalen mentioned, the resurfacing of Dover is of an interest, because just talking to the neighborhood, there's an understanding, well, that's the town road. Well, only because the town has done work, and they've seen the town workforces out there. As Mr. Whalen mentioned, when the water main went in, at least so 96, it was work that was done prior to that. But after 96, we had in 2007, that water main work, and on any road that we would do water work for, unpaid through the enterprise, to install it, we had to do something with the condition of the road, restore it, generally as is. I think the town did not just a permanent patch, but we actually did an overlay as well, just to make it, we knew we were in the neighborhood, try to make this last, so we weren't back there patching and, dealing with patch, even permanent patches were supposed to be permanent. They're less than ideal, and that's why the overlay was done. As far as any change, I'm sure there was a lot, I wasn't in the engineering division there, but there wasn't an intent to change the width. There may have been a crown to possibly improve some of the stormwater runoff. The challenge on this one I see is infrastructure fails, as we keep seeing. We know there's town infrastructure, storm drains that are going to be replaced because we can no longer maintain them. They have a useful life, they blind out. It's hard to say in this case, even, the best maintenance you could do, it may have served its useful life. It may have to be replaced. And I think the design of the system, the storm, the stormwater system is not as conventional. It's a little bit unusual. It is state of the art, but it does involve more infrastructure that we'd typically be looking at. And that's what makes this a little bit different for the commission. That's a little background, but precedent is we don't have to worry about outside of White Pond. That's helpful. It's been done in White Pond. And I'll also say what's interesting is when the town gets involved, it requires resources. And the intent was not a lot of resources because you're taking general fund taxpayer money and investing it into these private ways. So we have to be careful. How much can we commit versus, review, but how detailed design do we need to get? What kind of assessment needs to be done? And Andre, as you mentioned, through Public Works, we would sort of marshal that to present something to, the commission, but we'll be careful as we don't present. Our challenge is we don't want to present something that just doesn't get, and this is going to be a more of a legal question, the majority of, what is the majority? Is it the smaller subset of the direct abutters of the road? Or should intent be 60% of those who are going to be assessed a betterment? And I think you could interpret it that if I was living in that neighborhood and you were going to assess me a betterment, I would look at this bylaw and say, technically, I should have signed this. We just have to be prepared for that. And that's a legal question and or, practice that we just want to be successful. We want to flag. That was the intent of introducing the problem. As we talk to the Whalens and the council, we want to make it work, but we don't know what that means. But we also know we don't want to spend a lot of time and then just, nothing happens, across the way. It was funny. I took Sven for a ride because I want to show him what's the precedent. I fully expected whatever we do here with people over in Mitchell and White Ave would have been eager to say, yeah, we're looking, we want the same thing. We want to consider which we should. When we went to look at it, what used to look like Darton, they just repaved it privately. So, and I talked to engineering just after I went, because I keep driving it, and I was fan, this is, I'm looking, I go, wait a minute, he said, this is new pavement. I don't know what they did, other than it's new pavement.
Septic,
Was it,
it's septic. Yeah, they put a septic under the road and then to a lot further away from the
Okay.
pond.
and then they put an overlay on,
They
or we
must
don't
have-
know.
They had to go under the road.
So
yeah.
here's what's interesting, and this is, so it was private, they dealt with it privately, it was funded privately, there was no town involvement. In fact, the engineering division wasn't even engaged because they didn't marry into the public way. So all the work was, other than whether it's the NRC, Board of Health, you know, they would have gone through those authorities, but Public Works wasn't even involved. But I would also, you know, in a perfect world, private investment can actually be more efficient because they don't have to pay prevailing wage, all the things the town would typically do. But in this particular case, I just want to say the precedent is really important, and that's why we're trying to get our arms around it, and that's why we're having this conversation, so we can flag the issues. So what does success look like? And then how do we come back to the commission with a plan that then can be a public hearing, right? Because that's important, you know, to make sure it gets that transparent vetting.
You had a question.
Yeah, just to move this forward.
yeah.
We're reading your memo, I'm not sure I'm interpreting it correctly. You're recommending that with the commission's approval, your department take some time to look at this and see what may be involved, like all these questions you just.
Yeah, we
brought
wanted to
forward
get it on the table.
Better understand if
We-
it's.
A better understanding, and also with the neighborhood, we're also interested, and I know there's some neighbors who are here, and I think it's important to hear. Anything we can put on the table now will help us identify those, you know, potential hurdles that if we're gonna, you know, realize this, we just wanna make sure our time is well spent and we end up with a solution that works, so.
So with that, I think it's a good point to open this up to public comment. So as said before, stating the name and address and hopefully limited to 2 minutes.
Jane Prentice, 15 Fern Street, a former Public Works Commissioner and a community activist for our community. I'm probably one of the 3 oldest members in the community in the White Pond neighborhood. The neighborhood was subdivided in 1931, and that was before we even had a planning board. So because of that, they were sold off in 25-foot strips. That's how the land was sold, and many camps were put on the property. It does not have sewer. It is all on-site septic. And before we had water, before we had the White Pond well, we had many wells and septic systems right next to each other. So back in the day, when the White Pond well was put in, everyone was very happy and very willing to work with the community to get that well put in. And the people, so the water main went down Dover Street, and then we all privately, my husband and I paid for the water to come down Bolton to Fern Street out of our own dime, and then everyone else connected to it. So because it's the only, I've worked with Alan on a number of projects, and from what I can tell, the White Pond community is the only public way, private way for public use in the town of Concord that is pre-zoning. So because we were pre-zoning, we never got the HOA. So in a way, you know, my attitude has been, we need to fix this. However we fix it, it is really the town of Concord's responsibility as well as the community to fix this. Because what that did is it put the houses closer to the way than they would be in a normal residence. So when you look at the zoning residence, you think, oh, there's a 40-foot setback. Well, if you drive through the neighborhood, you've got a water load coming off of small camps that are now full season homes with a large roof and so many inches per minute pouring onto that, well, doesn't have that buffer to go to the road. So there's a lot of load. Jim referred to the catch basin clean out. We've been cleaning 9 catch basins by me going around asking for money. And Alan kindly gave me the code, the state code, and so we've been cleaning the sediment. And the first year, I had the pipes, the outflow pipes on those that had pipes checked. It's a mess. And there's infiltration, some don't have pipes. The road that Alan was talking about that just got repaved, that catch basin was actually an oil drum. And so as the oil drum filled up, that was it. So my point in the bigger picture is that Jim and Courtney have paid for their engineering. They're trying to meet the system halfway. But the bigger picture is there's all those others as well. And all of the side streets are really being taken care of by the people that live on the side streets. So Dover Street is being maintained and has consistently been maintained. But the question, I have a question, and that question is a legal question. Are we going to come in every time with a certain public works director or a certain public works commission? And redefine who's gonna pave Dover Street? Are we gonna come in every time and say, okay, the commission, in my view at this point, should also be looking at catch basins on all the private ways in town to make sure they're meeting the 50% of the sediment being cleaned up, because that is a state requirement. So this, I'm just opening, I don't mean to open a can of worms, but what I'm trying to do is say, this is an important precedent here, because we are pre-zoning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions in the room or online? Do we have someone online?
See, everybody, don't see any hands.
The room,
Oh,
questions?
Alan, I thought I saw there was a hand on the Zoom at the very beginning of it.
Yeah, Terry Ackerman had her hand up, but early, like before, just as Whalen started the discussion, so.
Okay,
Let's see, yeah.
no further questions, so. I think it's the questions from the commissioner and a comment from the public, I think show that. I think nobody is questioning the problem. I think the challenge is how we make the best out of it and in a way that not a significant part of the 61 you're proposing should pay for it are making trouble or not paying, and then we're sitting there on taxpayer cost. I think that's the biggest challenge we have here, besides thinking about a broader concept. And if you touch this on one corner, would it make sense to look at the whole neighborhood and see what the right solution there is? I think the commission doesn't need to decide today, but if you look at the bylaw, again, we had some questions on that. We also don't need to follow the kind of proposal of how the betterment is done. We could also make a decision depending on where this goes, to say it's just limited to the 13 lots that are abutting it. This is just, the bylaw just asks for a proposal and how the betterment is done. It's not binding for us. But me personally, I would say it would be great if the neighborhood comes together in a way that perhaps together with the town / public works and the neighborhood, that there's a path to a longer solution, like potentially forming a HOA or whatever, to take care of the things, not just now, but get a framework that addresses issues that are coming down in time. And that another commission yet again has to figure out how to interpret the bylaw and how to read it. Because that would give a proper framework to kind of build a reserve as a HOA, to build up for these things, to charge costs that are unforeseen or repairs, and would give most likely the town a comfort to say chime in and put tax dollar in ahead of the billing. So I think this is my personal view, is I would I would really encourage you and whoever is here from the neighborhood to potentially think about come together as a neighborhood and see how you can look at this as a long-term solution and not just a fix of this one thing.
I'm sorry, one more question. In the temporary roads repair bylaw, if an HOA, if we bring the neighborhood together, one of the questions that I have immediately when I read that bylaw is engineering included? So for instance, if we were gonna do a comprehensive plan in the neighborhood, right now, the only option that we have is to call a paving company and have them pave. And that goes through the betterment. If engineering is included in the betterment, I think that makes it much more attractive to people. Jim and Courtney have paid for the engineering for their drainage, but that doesn't address the rest of the neighborhoods. And not everybody's going to be paying privately for that. So if we knew the legal answer to whether or not this temporary roads repair includes engineering, I think for us to sell anything to the neighborhood, we need to know that whether or not engineering is included. And we also need to know if we can put a cost analysis to it.
I can't talk for the commission or officially for the town, but I think
No, I understand.
it would be helpful for commission and the town to understand points like that would say, if these, let's say, whatever 5 points are there, the neighborhood would be open to form a HOA or would form a HOA. And it is something I think we can discuss internally, the town can think about what they want to achieve and see if that is possible. I think generally I have the feeling most likely we all think on the same side. There's a long-term problem and perhaps it's a good time to fix it now. And if the town needs to chip in certain things, we have to talk with the right people. Yeah.
Yes, and if I can just offer, I've talked to the town manager, and we've already had conversations before this petition, not about this problem. So the White Pond area has already been on our radar for something, and there's a lot of different needs, so this may be, the impetus to do a little bit more, but staff's willing to spend some time and energy into process to better understand that. I will certainly work the town manager's office to find out about the funding issues, because, we have no financing to offer. We have some of our staff resources, but that's limited, and it's not the more detailed engineering sort of costs that would be required. And I do think there is some value in trying to fix this problem with an understanding that White Pond, the town does have interest in the quality of White Pond and the investments there. So there's a few things that are a little bit different today than they were even 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So I think we wanted to put it on the radar. That's why this was a discussion. And, I'm willing to work with whomever to try and, figure out what can we do that we could possibly bring back and then, answer some questions before we sort of bring it back to the commission. There may be, it may be an iterative process. We need to come back and get some guidance. But we want to be clear that we didn't want a hearing without all sorts of questions and just, this is an introduction. And so I appreciate the fact that you've got the needs, you've got a mechanism. And the question is, how does that fit, and how can we make it work? So and if there's a betterment assessed, I need to say, we talked, there's a certain about, there's all terms in here. And so we got a partner, it's not going to be a push, but the reasonableness is a funny language. We can talk to council. What does reasonable mean? For us, things can take 20 years and that's not necessarily what we're talking about, but just the assessment of a betterment and the financing. At a minimum, we have to look at if it's going to town meeting and if we got to have that on our radar as far as a schedule, and so that can help us put a little bit of, fire under us to do things rather than sit on things. So.
Okay.
So are the next steps clear?
Are they, yeah, I'm prepared to continue. We'll work with the petitioner, but also, you know, I think the neighborhood to try and get some understanding. And at the end of the day, what I would say is, if there isn't anything that we can offer that we think is gonna help it succeed, I think there's a legitimate, here's our ask, just proceed, and we'll just have to do the mechanics of that. It's just, the concern is if it's successful or not. But I think they're entitled to say, this is the problem and this is our best, you know.
So do you think it's right now we have on the schedule for the next meeting already the hearing for this? Do you?
No, not,
Parties.
I wasn't sure. I just put a placeholder. What I want to tell you is he'll be in a follow-up meeting. That was the intent.
Okay. I just want to make proper expectations. set.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you for the time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We wanted to make sure your first order as president. was
Yeah, that's
Something
great.
noteworthy instead of just simple stuff, right?
We knew there'd be continuity.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that you had something to work with.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So with that, we're coming to the next
Thank
one, and that is, where are we? Director's report.
Yeah, so. Let me see if I can find where I am here. May, director's report, May, I think this is it.
Really enjoy the draft. So he's rushed it.
So while you
Yep,
look
I'm
for the
loading it up,
director's
yeah.
report, I floated an idea with Alan. Because we always have the director's report kind of squeezed into kind of the last minutes. And again, we don't make a decision today, but I just want to put it out as an idea and you can give me feedback to, because we have 3 sections in the director's report to circle, rotate through the sections. That every section comes on the agenda more deeply in a quarter and but it shifted. So
Yeah.
one meeting we do water sewer, the other one we do then the highway and grounds and so on. So we give a little bit, say,
Yeah.
more time on a certain section and perhaps also to shift the burden a little bit away that that they have to show up all the time. Of course, if there is emergency topics or something like that, that would be on the agenda, but to shift it a little bit. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
The content is always in the written director's
Yeah.
report, but
Right.
sometimes, as a, for instance, the water main break. That happened after we had written our director's report, so this is a new topic that I'm speaking on in the
Yeah.
presentation that was not a part of the director's report.
Yeah, so just as an idea.
That sounds great.
Okay, we've got the, following up the director's report. I don't know who the photographer is, but I'm impressed.
Yes.
Just for what it's worth, Linda Collins does a lot of she's preparing our director's reports, and I think appreciate her kind of the appreciation of the various images and things that she finds.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Where is that?
This is the walkway that goes, the parking lot over by Kai's Road.
Oh, yeah,
Over
okay, yeah.
to Low
Gotcha.
Road.
Okay.
So it's actually, things are, certainly popping these days, but,
Yes.
okay, so Jeff.
First 4 slides are water and sewer slides. These are thematically grouped together on this particular slide. To the left, we're showing the hydrant flushing that we do. We flush 1/3 of the system's water mains, each time, we do it twice a year. So in 1 calendar year, we've flushed 2/3 of the town's water mains. In an 18-month span, we've flushed 100% of the town's water mains. In this spring, which was approximately mid-March to first week of April, more or less, we were flushing mains in West Concord. And to the right of the same slide, we discovered a defect with one of our hydrants that was within the flushing zone.
there's a defect to the foot valve on the hydrant, and our crew pulled the guts, if you will, of the hydrant, and they were able to repair it in the shop and then restore it to service. And then the middle slide is somewhat related to.
Do you do every hydrant? No, just the mains. You don't do every hydrant.
It is,
With the flushing, we do all the mains, but select hydrants.
That's
Yes.
what I just wanted to
That's right.
verify that,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a lot of hydrants, but the question is, you try to pull sediment out that might be
Yeah.
building up over time. But in order to, it's like your plumbing. If you have, a long series of one plumbing line with multiple taps off it, just go to the last one, open it up, and you'll clear all the lines. So that's how we,
Thank you.
and we do unidirectional flushing as well. That's so that water is, controlled, so it maximizes the velocity and the cleaning effort.
Thank you.
middle slide concerns a fire flow test, which is a private fire flow test. We would do these types of tests as an application, so it's a private effort usually, and we have our representation of the division operations on site. These hydrant flow tests are usually done in the evening hours to minimize disruption to the public, potential dirty water complaints, if you will, from scouring up the mains. Next slide. Interesting enough, this is two separate incidences recently. This is one of our more problematic sewage lift stations, the Laurel Street lift station. It's actually on Walden Street where Laurel meets Walden. There's frequently rags that bind up the pumps, and we have to pull the pump in order to free up the debris. And it's not always a wipe, it's not always, it can be clothing garments, and often case that is what we find. Just this morning, it happened again, so that's a third incident. We are working with the residents, that are served, the gravity sewer service that is served by that pump station. And we're trying to arrive at a resolution that prevents these materials from getting to the pump station. Just as a quick aside, Aaron McCloskey is on the Public Safety Task Force for the 250th that's coming up next year for the town. And the parade route goes down Walden, so this is one of the major arteries that are impacted by the festivities annually, but more so on the 250th. So I'd like to have a solution implemented before that event rolls around.
Do you have any idea where all those rags are coming from? That is a consistent issue? I mean, I had a weird thought, but that's just,
Yeah, so what we have to do is be very careful. It's about education. And, the challenge is, wastewater is interesting where you just have open pipes that go from your home into a 4-inch building drain into a 6-inch, service line that can dump into an 8-inch collector. And while there's certain activities that aren't, you look for, the horses, not the zebras, right?
yeah.
And, we have to be careful. There's one operation there that we sort of got our eyes on. We're talking with maintenance people to try and help them understand that, more likely than not, they may be the source. And
That's probably the exact same place that just
Yeah.
totally popped into my brain
Yeah, right.
as to where it's coming from.
exactly. And so
Okay.
part of it is the education and what can you do? It's difficult. It's like sump pumps. The difficulty of managing what people do inside the four walls, that yes, it's illegal, but what are you gonna do about it? And that sort of becomes, a challenge.
Okay,
Okay,
And we're notifying this customer every time we have one of these incidents, just to impress upon them the impact that this has.
perhaps collection things for any kind of clothing could be really,
There's one right there at the school. At Alcott School, there's a textile bin.
yeah, but I don't think it's Alcott, that's the problem.
No, I mean, but it's very
Right.
close, I think, or
Yeah,
maybe it's a different
almost-
neighborhood. Anyway, all the schools have the textile.
it just
Yeah.
speaks to some of the challenges of,
Right.
what we're up against, but the implication is. at 2 AM when the pumps are seized up and it needs to flow, operators have to respond.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
This slide is not thematically related to one another. To the left, our operations crew are assisting both highway and engineering. We had some drainage issues on Ministerial. And Loring Road is a cul-de-sac off of Ministerial. The storm drain continues down Loring before it has its stormwater discharge. And in this particular case, I believe that what we were doing is assisting in the rebuild of the invert of the drain manhole. So we have, you know, the labor, the experience, the equipment to be able to contribute to this solution. To the right, we're simply highlighting what's close to the end process of restoring the White Pond well. We do periodically do inspections, cleanings, flow tests of wells just to maintain their optimum performance. We had the White Pond well taken offline for mechanical inspections, and it was put back online. It was chlorinated, bacteria tested successfully. And then we would run it to waste to help remove, similar to the mains flushing, to remove any sediments that may have been sitting in the main while the main was not flowing, before we start putting it through the filters of the Deaconess Water Treatment Facility. So it was actually on May 1st that we put the Deaconess station back online. So it's taking flow from the Deaconess wells and also the White Pond well.
So that preventative maintenance of inspecting, pulling apart, well and looking at the pump, it's a $20,000 to $40,000 expense per site. These are the sorts of money that we're talking about for this kind of work. So when we talk about our budgets, we allow for a couple of these a year in our budget.
And the last slide is thematically related again. The middle photo and the right photo are one project. It's the Elm Street water service replacement. There was a water service leak within the right of way. The photo in the middle, there was a 3-part union that was actually leaking, and we excavated that, replaced it, and repaired it. To the left of the photo was our water main break that we had. That was a 2 AM water main break. It was a significant water main break. It was an 8-inch cast iron on Middle Street in the downtown area. We had significant effects on both of our 2 reservoirs, and incidentally, the eye hydrants that we have 2 of them in the system. They both mimicked and gave the same alerts that we have on our SCADA sensing for the elevations of the reservoirs. We had a little bit of a hiccup on this one. There was, as you can see in the photograph, it's quite busy in that trench. One of the operators is standing on a duct bank crossing it, and there were a few other utilities that made this challenging, but there was also natural gas. And one of the gas services was nicked, and that shut down the repair from about 4:30 to 6:30 before we could resume the repair work. And then we got it buttoned up and put back in service at 8:30 in the morning. But all in all, it was a very challenging repair, and the guys did great.
Our crew is really got their system down. They're sort of like the Formula One racer crews where they all go have their job. It's pretty, we're very fortunate right now. They all seem to know. The challenge of a 2 AM break is oftentimes indicators of where the problem is or trouble calls. And that helps us identify where's there low pressure, where's there discolored water, so we can target where do we need to look. Over 130 miles of pipe, lots of water gushing, small crew, where do you go? So that's why these eye hydrants are kind of interesting to give us, some data, but we're fortunate that this was obvious by the first responder going in on Main Street, saw it, but that was just luck, not, anything
So
else.
one quick question is, I got a call from the neighbor there.
Yeah.
Which is live on the other street.
That's right, yeah.
And he was under the impression I know everything about what's going on with the water. But he gave me a call like 7 AM in the morning. So we are not putting a notification out on the webpage or anything.
Great question, and I'm trying to kind of work with Jeff. What we know is in some breaks will affect a large number of
Yeah.
residents. So when we know there's gonna be an upset and a large number, we will put, change the message on the phone machine, put a news and notice out. That's about that's how we push it. When you look at 2 a.m.,
Yeah, it's bedtime.
it's, as far as notice goes, the question, well, who is gonna be affected? And even with the first drop in pressure, very few people are really up using water. However, the MCIs, the Emerson hospitals, we need to, and sort of direct calls to them, specialized. For residents, by the time it's isolated, you now know how many people are gonna be directly affected. And it was only a couple dozen.
Yeah.
In the immediate neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so at that point, there's a decision, a news and notice, it's just noise to people. It's not gonna be
Yeah.
effective.
Right.
And for the couple dozen, we got trucks driving everywhere. We kind of assume we can handle that call. And when people call, we can tell them what's happening. And it's not gonna overwhelm our ability to be customer friendly. So the decision is, no, you don't go knock on doors, wake people up at 7 a.m. People, what they do is frustrating. You go to take a shower.
That's why
What's
you
going
call.
on? And that's when, then you
That's why you
call.
call.
Right, exactly. It's an inconvenience, but it was limited to, that unfortunately the direct.
In this case, it was Middle Street between Academy and Thoreau, so that was
Okay.
13 homes and 2 hydrants taken out of service temporarily.
It's still, they still have Middle Street closed this morning. They still coming off of the road.
I think
Still
that's
there.
a police decision for
That's a police.
safety, for the road surface. So it's local traffic can get in and out. It's trying to discourage it as a throughway.
Yeah, I was there like 6 o'clock in the morning to go walk my dog in Emerson. I was like, what is going on?
Now you're gonna start learning these things.
I know.
They know who to call at 3 a.m.
Yeah. I thought it was a gas break.
Yeah, well, there's the nicking the gas again, when you're responding. You have to get dig safe, you have to have the utilities come out and mark, because you
Yeah.
can't dig until you know, and that was a unmarked gas line. Aaron is not here, thanks, Jeff. I
Thank
will
you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
just kind of share with you some of the highway grounds operations. Remember, we talked about the new milling equipment that we have? And basically what you can see is sort of the old school, this is a pothole, right here. And we have areas where there's a number of these potholes start forming, and really this piecemeal kind of repair isn't effective. It's not on the roads program for a while because there's other roads in town that we need to sort of manage, but getting that piece of specialized equipment over here gets attached, this whole assembly gets attached to our skid steer, and it allows them to mill a small section, but more than, a hand area. And you get a couple passes, you can literally do sort of a larger area and do a more permanent patch repair. And so that's been, so far, it's a new piece of equipment. We've already had it out kind of working, and it's all to try and help us, sort of improve road conditions around town. And this is sort of in-house versus having to get a third-party contractor, but it's fairly limited
They
area.
just did Main Street like last week.
Mhm.
But we're getting all new pavement. So they didn't use this fancy thing on Main Street last year.
No, this
Last
is
week, they're doing the classic thing where they're like taking the bucket,
exactly.
pounding it, the
Exactly.
next one pounding it.
Exactly. That's right.
Because we're getting it all redone, thank God.
Yes,
It
and
makes
so,
you
and that's all
horrible.
part of the kind of being strategic with where do you spend your resources?
Yep.
Where's the
Okay.
best bang for your
I
buck?
wanna go, where is this thing? I wanna go check this buddy out.
Well, you know what? Come on in. Yeah, now that you're on the commission, and this is to all of you, and I do to be clear. You're all welcome to have those extra, opportunities to come in and see for yourself. You guys do a lot for us as far as staff and help with policies. Anything we can do, to help you understand what we're doing, help you help us. And you can always call me and, we're available, I will say we talk directly with the chairs on regular, business, but that doesn't prevent you guys from calling and
checking in.
And wanting to go out and watch them.
Yeah, that's nothing wrong with
I
that.
wanna drive it.
Yeah.
Well, now there are limits. We've also got on the playing fields, you can see, sort of their, tis the season. See, they're edging, the infields, our crews really put a lot of time and energy into maintaining the recreation, fields around town. And, as I said, this is we're hot and heavy into it. Growing season is hitting, hard as well. We had, Eric Shaw, who over here is our tree warden, works on an annual contribution from the garden club to provide a tree, and we have sort of a ceremonial Arbor Day tree planting. And I did ask Aaron to tell me if he could let me know what the tree was, and it was a red maple that was planted over at the Harvey Wheeler building.
Nice.
Engineering, Justin Richardson, who is standing in for Steve Dukran while Steve is taking some well-earned time.
While he's taking a seat, so.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a lot of repaving work done on Walden Pond.
Oh, yes, on 126.
So is this the
The
state?
state is doing that work.
Okay.
That's right, to complete
That was
work.
my
that was-
suspicion,
That's
but I
right,
wanted to
yeah.
clarify.
They'd done some work year or two ago, and this is to sort of, complete the work. Justin can tell you, he coordinates a lot.
Yeah,
of
so it's a state grant, that they are basically offered to pay. It's for, numbered routes, state numbered routes, so that's, 126, so the majority of the work. Yeah, the majority of the work is in Lincoln, and they did that half-mile section for us between Lincoln and Route 2.
Okay.
So. I'll be quick. What you're seeing on the screen is the Potter Street design for a drainage improvement. This was actually one of Saul Wybara's last accomplishments. You'll see in your director's report, his position's now open. So, we try to do a lot of our designs and stuff during the winter months so that we can sort of implement them in the construction season. So this is one of the designs. You can,
And, the trends and sort of the storage, all the stormwater calculations that we were talking about, previously. In-house, we have the skill set, a lot of work that needs to be done. So generally, in a perfect world, our engineers are reviewing other people's work. That's the, with the exception of the smaller, kind of modest stormwater improvement project.
yeah, so he did a quick HydroCAD model there on the right, just to see how much like the capacity of the improvement would, mitigate what's going on, so. As Jeff mentioned, this is our ministerial drive. This was the sinkhole that kind of randomly formed. And basically we determined that it was a result of you can see the drain manhole right there. That was the bottom of that structure was compromised and groundwater levels were so high. And the material in that area is a very silty, fine material and was getting pulled up through by groundwater and getting discharged out. And it was basically pulling material underneath the road base, and the road base ended up collapsing and stuff like that.
You guys have a picture of that last time? That sounds kind of cool. I mean, no, not,
yeah, yeah.
but I mean, just like,
Yeah, there are pictures in the director's report of the holes that in the road and stuff. So this actually only one lane was open for a relatively long time because the whole
never
other
would've
side
noticed
is
that.
collapsed, so. So now that's been paved, there's grass growing, all stuff like that, and everything seems to be functioning appropriately, so. Obviously, we'll keep monitoring it and make sure everything's good. This is some paving that's going on in town. Butternut Circle, that was put into binder at the end of last year. We're now doing the curbing and sidewalks, raising the structures, and it's gonna get the top course of pavement. The Madison Drive neighborhood, that has been reclaimed, as you can see. It is now actually in binder, thankfully. That just happened prior to the rain, so. But that's a lot of the work we're doing in town right now. Next week, Ornac, we're gonna be starting doing a mill and overlay on Ornac. So We just got the schedule from Lazaro today, so.
The whole length of it from the.
There's a lot of pieces, but it's a good significant chunk of it, so,
So Main Street is on a schedule for summer, or
yes.
Are you on Main Street too?
I'm pairing up, it's right there.
You're almost neighbors.
And I was gonna say, we are neighbors.
Yeah. So, but that is synchronized with the school, with CA or?
So they've, unfortunately for us, that there's a lot of, like, it's sort of based on the contractor schedule, like when they're available, when stuff can function. Concord Academy has told us times that would be better for them. We're trying to accommodate as best as possible, but it's, you know, it's.
Because they have some heavy equipment going in and out.
It's gonna be difficult, yeah, cause they're also under construction as well. They're gonna have a summer camp going on, so like it's. You know, it unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the heavy.
Yeah, so they'll make accommodations, like obviously, well, you know, everyone's aware it's happening, you know, we've discussed it very significantly with Don Kinkman, so, we'll try to facilitate as much as we can. Usually they can make accommodations, so like, you know, the pavement can get driven on, you know, within probably 2 hours safely without really doing too much damage to it, so we're hoping to be able to facilitate that and just keep
The key
everything.
is communication.
Exactly, yeah,
Okay.
you know, and we're in talks with Concord Academy for sure,
Yeah.
so.
To Justin's credit, with this construction, it's second nature. You have to talk, whether it's homeowners, contractors, there's always coordination. And it's always subject to the contractor showing up, you know, when they say, because, you know, you're prepare, and then they say, oh, something happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, so.
You know,
it's
we
just
give
the
them
nature
a
of the
schedule,
beast.
yeah, we give them a schedule that they have that, you know, within the construction season, but they do have a lot of flexibility on like when they can actually do it, when their equipment's available, that type of stuff, so. We do our best.
All right, Justin, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, just.
Russ Carlstead, our facility manager. Russ, if you want to just close up
Save the best for last.
save the best for last.
Right.
That's right.
So, we're finally getting to the bottom of repairing the bathroom that has been out of service since 2 weeks before I got hired. Went through a lot of conversation how to get this done next door, but basically, here you can see we've called in some professionals, cut the concrete out. We got one of our employees there, Scott, doing due diligence and digging out everything we need to get done. He's our plumber. So basically, we had to excavate both bathrooms out without disturbing the in-house process. We were almost 100% successful in that. But as of today, if you go to the next one, you know, last week we poured the concrete. All the plumbing's back in, it's all inspected. We put an epoxy floor in over the weekend. And now they're reassembling the bathroom and hopefully we'll hear flushing sounds on Friday.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
It's right over there.
Right over in that building.
See where those orange
Yeah.
cones are? Right behind
The
there.
Highway grounds and engineering have had to sort of migrate to other buildings
Gotcha.
over the past
It's a
couple.
way to get to know everybody.
Exactly, you know.
It's a community down here.
Yeah, yeah.
You laugh, but
Certain
I
level
can
of
say, hey,
knowledge.
it's nice to see you. I don't get to see you as
Yeah.
often, so, yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that's done, and, you know, we'll show you some shots of what it looks like when it's done next month. But other than that, we're just still dealing with air conditioning issues, roof leaks during the water, during the rain, and we've been talking about the climate.
Yeah, Russ is doing a lot to still, you know, in his first 6 months of understanding the needs, a lot of communication with facilities being relatively new to Public Works. There's 26 different facilities around town, different departments, just a lot of discussion. They have needs they've identified. Russ is looking at them and we kind of look at our capital plans to figure out, well, here's our pool of fund. These are the priorities. And we're still working through that. So, and there's a lot of new, just for what it's, a lot of new different department heads and personnel. That it's really, Dave, you find the whole process of it, that's a different discussion,
Yeah,
but
that's right.
you know, it's been pretty dynamic, you know, as far as the changes and transitions. So
Wow.
any event, so that's the director's report.
Cool.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Bottle of wine.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Oh,
All in favor?
hi.
Aye. All right.